I was appointed the general manager's position there, and I guess I was there as the general manager for 10 years and have had three other club assignments since then as a general manager. So I guess, as they say, the rest is history, but it was a lot of work, a lot of luck. The biggest challenge was to not be involved in the food and beverage operation, or to not default to the food and beverage operation when things got busy, when things got hectic, when things got challenging, because that was my comfort zone. Technology has made life very convenient, much easier, where, we have an online reservation system. We can check reservations 24/7, 365, where, 15 years ago, there was a reservation book that only stood at the host stand, using that as a food and beverage example. Give the club industry a chance. It's a great industry. The one thing that I loved, especially when I was at that club, my very first club, so I was the chef for 7 years, I was the assistant general manager for 3, and I was the general manager for 10. So I was at that club for a total of 20 years.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast, Reshape Hospitality with Tech. I'm your host, Maria, and with me is my co host, Kazim. In this episode, we have with us Jeffrey Martocci, an industry leader and Chief Operating Officer at American Yacht Club. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Jeffrey, please share with us a quick overview of your background with our audience about the beginning of your career and the journey to reach your current position.
So it's a very interesting background, at least I think. I went to culinary school up in Boston, and all I ever really wanted to do was to be a chef. And I achieved that, and I was working in a country club, and the manager who I was working for said, if we don't find you a job in New York City at a big hotel, you're going to get very bored very quickly. And I said, really? And I didn't think anything about it. And he said, well, let's talk about your career. I'm going to retire in about 4 years. Let's think about maybe you transitioning. And I said, no, thank you. And I don't want to be the dining room manager here. I want to do something more. And he said, okay. They hired someone. It didn't work out. And then they approached me again. And he said, what if we tell you that we'll give you the general manager's job, or you will work towards getting the general manager's job? And I said, sure. And as it turned out, I worked for 3 years as his assistant. I interviewed for the job. I didn't get it, but I stayed on as the assistant. I worked for another gentleman, stayed with him for a couple of years. He left. I was appointed the general manager's position there, and I guess I was there as the general manager for 10 years and have had three other club assignments since then as a general manager. So I guess, as they say, the rest is history, but it was a lot of work, a lot of luck, a lot of being in the right place at the right time, and having very good mentors and very understanding boards and volunteer leaderships at the clubs I've worked at.
Your career seems to be very challenging. And when you think back to the start of your career, could you tell us what were the main difficulties you came across, and what are the ongoing challenges you are facing till now?
So the first challenge, at least initially, was getting comfortable with things that I was not comfortable with. So, when I left the kitchen to become the assistant general manager of a country club, the biggest challenge was to not be involved in the food and beverage operation, or to not default to the food and beverage operation when things got busy, when things got hectic, when things got challenging, because that was my comfort zone. So the biggest thing was to get involved in the committees, to insert myself, to attend meetings, to attend board meetings, to become very familiar with the club economic paradigm, because that was something that, as a chef, all you know is your food cost and your labor cost, but that was about it. And to know what other sources of revenue and expenses. So that was, I would say, the biggest challenge was balancing between my food and beverage responsibilities, which came as second nature, versus some of the other administrative and governance things. In a country club and in a club environment, governance challenges are pretty challenging.
Being the general manager and chief operating officer of American Yacht Club, could you tell us more about the club and the unique services it offers to members and guests?
So we have about 1,500 members in all classifications and all categories. We have 8 hard shoe paddle courts or hard shoe tennis courts, 3 paddle courts, 3 pickleball courts. We have a full pool. We have a beach. We have a very, very robust sailing facility where they sail 365 days a year. We do club cruises. We do club trips. We have a junior program. We have a camp program. Obviously, we have a restaurant, and we shoot sporting clays in the winter months on every Saturday. So over Long Island Sound, we shoot sporting clays. We do frostbiting in the winter, and in the summer, obviously, we do sailing. We have 88 sailing events on our calendar throughout the course of the year, and the preponderance of those take place from, we'll call it commissioning, which is the end of April, until decommissioning, which is sometime in October. So we have a unique. And I wouldn't say we have a unique. We're very much like almost every other yacht club in America. We are on a point. We're on a peninsula here in Rye, New York, where we're surrounded on 3 sides by water. So if I look out my office window behind me, I can see into Manhattan. I can see the bridges that get you from Manhattan to Long Island. And if I really look, I can see Long Island, because we're between Long Island Sound and Rye Harbor. So we have a very, very unique piece of property. Our forefathers were very fortunate and smart way back in 1883 to figure out that this is a pretty neat place to build a yacht club.
Are there any upcoming future projects you guys are planning to build that will enhance the guest experience? Could you share with us?
Well, we are in the process right now. Before I started here in August of 2022. In the beginning of 2022, the club had completed a survey that was created by the McMahon Group. They're a club consulting firm. And so as a result of that survey, the club created a facilities plan, which is basically a master plan for the building. So from the front gate to the flagpole, which is at the end of the property, there's a master plan that was created to improve the sailing center, to improve the beach and pool and the bathhouse, to improve the restaurant, to improve outdoor dining, to improve, at some point in time, tennis and paddle, to improve our staff house, basically a club-wide master plan that will probably take place over 10 or 15 years, I would say. So yes, we are in the process of that. We recently have socialized our facilities plan, phase 1 of our facilities plan, to the membership. And as part of socializing that, there's a survey associated with it regarding the plan itself, the financing of the plan, everything specific to that plan. And the survey just closed yesterday, and we're in the process of actually digesting all of those survey results now this week.
Jeffrey, you talk about the survey. So could you please explain what kind of market analysis did you conduct before planning any new projects?
So, like I said, the survey predates my time here, but I know, the original survey, which was the building block for the facilities plan, asked members about every single building here and every single service here at the club, from tennis to sailing to paddle to power boating to actual sailing, to the beach experience, to the restaurant experience, to the service experience. It was an all-encompassing sort of market analysis question for the membership. It was, I forget, there were probably 300 questions. It took a long time to fill out, and an even longer time to digest all of the results, especially the written notes that came back. It was easy because McMahon put everything into statistics for us. But to look at the actual written comments was probably a 2 or 3 day process, which I did as part of my onboarding procedures.
Looking ahead, what is your vision and goals for the future of the American Yacht Club under your leadership?
So our first thing is to maintain our status within the sailing community. We are known for actually promoting and having good sailors. We've got a couple of world champions among our ranks with various boats. We have some Olympians among our ranks. We're a very competitive sailing club. We have quite a few collegiate sailors who have stayed on as members and are very involved in our sailing program, and we'll do the vineyard race and a variety of other races. That would be the first thing. And the second thing is to reestablish ourselves as one of the more luxurious fine dining yacht clubs in the country.
What inspired you to explore the recreation industry?
It was a bit of a mission that I was given upon my hiring, which I embraced wholeheartedly. It was one of those things. It's always nice to sort of rebrand and reestablish an establishment as a leader in that particular market, in that particular forum, whether it be sailing, which we're already well established, but in the food and beverage realm and in the hospitality realm.
You have been in the industry for more than 15 years. You know that the essence of hospitality lies in welcoming guests and taking care of their needs. And if I'm going to ask this, what do you believe is the most important factor for the future of hospitality industry? So, what are your thoughts on this?
So, one of the biggest challenges, at least in my aspect of the hospitality industry, is being an attractive opportunity, because what we're finding in the club space is we're losing out on the younger generation who are graduating from hospitality schools to hotels, to restaurants, to the bigger corporations, because they can offer PTO, they can offer the ability to travel and to go to a multitude of destinations while still working. Because if you go to work for, let's say, Marriott or Wyndham or Hilton, you can work in New York City, you can work in the Caribbean, you can work in California, you can work in Chicago, you can work anywhere, and you can surround yourself with great professionals and be exposed to many different things. That's challenge one. The other challenge is in the club space, at least in most club spaces, and I can say that because I work in the Northeast, where we're such a seasonal business. I don't want to say we don't have a life in the summer when the season is at its peak, but it's a much different paradigm. So we become less attractive because the younger generation don't necessarily they don't mind working, but they also want to have their time off. They want to get PTO. They want to have life experience on their own. And I guess that sort of cliche work-life balance. And, that's a big challenge, because this industry needs to change. And I found it when I was in the country club world as well, where, they were golf pros, the golf pro community was shrinking, because, at least in the private club world, because people didn't want to work 6 and 7 days a week. And the same thing with being a club manager. People don't want to work 6 and 7 days a week, and they don't want to work 6 days a week to be a food and beverage director and have one day off a week and get 15 emails and 3 text messages on your day off. They want to be able to disconnect. And when you're in the corporate environment, the corporate structure is such that the bench is deeper. So let's say I'm out for 3 or 4 days. There's someone who is of equitable skill, ability, and talent can take over and backfill my needs while I'm not in the office. In the club space, at least in the Northeast, we don't have that. And in the smaller markets, they don't have that. So the responsibility, all of the responsibility falls upon myself. And the rest of the members of our team. Not to say that I don't have a great team. I have a wonderful team here. It's just a matter of backfilling those positions when folks are out. So that, I would say, is the biggest challenge in the hospitality field. in the club space.
With all these new technologies, how important are they for a better guest experience in our industry?
So obviously, technology has literally changed the world, and for the good and the bad. As I mentioned before, on your day off, you get voicemail messages, you get text messages, you get emails. I get voicemail to email. So there's literally nowhere to hide. Um, Not that you would want to hide, but I think you understand the idiom. The technology has made life very convenient, much easier, where, we have an online reservation system. We can check reservations 24/7, 365, where, 15 years ago, there was a reservation book that only stood at the host stand, using that as a food and beverage example. And the same thing holds true with one of the things that COVID taught us was how to do virtual meetings. Something like Teams, the medium that we are on right now, something like Zoom is a byproduct of COVID. So it has, in fact, made life a little bit easier. I know during COVID, um, our board and committee meeting attendance was at 100% because people could take a meeting in their home, in their office, in their car, walking on the beach, doing whatever, because it was very convenient. That's an advantage. That's a huge game changer in as far as technology goes. It also makes it challenging because oftentimes when you're in your own home, you become very comfortable. So I can tell loads of stories of being in board meetings, watching 3 board members lay on the couch and eat dinner while the board meeting is happening, where people didn't quite understand that it was in fact business, and you would never act that way if you were in person. So, technology has made life very, very convenient. You've got AI, which has wildly changed the world you know, with everything. So I think technology, the more you embrace technology, I think the better off life will be. But in some instances, you have to. It's got to be a fine balance between letting technology run the place and having that human touch. Certainly in the food and beverage and in the hospitality space, because technology gets lost. The human touch gets lost with technology. So in the hospitality field, I think it's a great data source, but I don't think it replaces the human interaction and the human touch.
You mentioned AI, so I wanted to ask, we hear these words like AI and big data, and all of this sums up into guest personalization. So how important is guest personalization, and what effect AI and big data will have on it?
So the guest personalization, it certainly will help us give the data, but I don't think, at least in my viewpoint, on February 21st, 2024, I don't think, or I don't see AI playing a huge role in, like I said, the hospitality space. I see it using it to gather data and to make you more efficient operationally, but it's never going to replace, hey, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, how's little Johnny doing at Columbia? And, I know last week when you were in, you really liked that Sauvignon Blanc that we poured by the glass. Can I get you another? AI will never do that. And the same thing on the sailing side and on the golf side and on the tennis side. It'll never, AI will help a golf pro give a lesson because they can hit into a simulator. You can teach 365 days a year. You don't have to worry about bad weather. It's going to give you the trajectory, the ball flight. It's going to give you the height. It's going to give you the rotation. It's going to give you all of that. It's going to give you the spin. But it's never going to replace the pro standing there telling you what you did wrong mechanically is part of your swing, or what you did right mechanically as part of your swing. And the same thing for tennis. Sailing hasn't quite gotten like that, but there are some AI applications in the sailing world where you can wing foil and things like that on a simulator, similar to what you would do for golf and tennis. So I think, there's a little bit of a fine line. I think in the hospitality space, generally speaking, it's not, you're not going to have the robot coming over to take your order like in the Jetsons. If you remember the Jetsons cartoon in the 70s, I don't think you'll replace that, but I think the AI and things technologically will help us do our jobs better and make us more efficient. You'll never replace the human touch.
Yeah, definitely, because this is a debate. There are a lot of people who believe like AI will revolutionize everything, but there are people who are adamant that human touch is the most important part of the hospitality space in general.
Percent. And, do we utilize AI? Sure. You know, my wife is a real estate agent. She uses AI to help her write listings when she does that. But it doesn't replace the fact when someone is buying a home that there's an emotional component to it. And again, that's a form of hospitality, right? So I think the hospitality space will never be replaced by AI until we want to be completely automated. And I'm not sure that autonomous is the way to go, at least in the hospitality world. There are some things that are really cool. You can go to a wine bar where, it's effectively it's a program. I guess you could call it AI, where you walk up, you push a button, and it gives you a 3-ounce taste or a 2-ounce taste or a 5-ounce taste of a couple of different wines that you want. And then there's an online portal that will help you figure out what your taste profiles are, what you like, what you don't like, and it puts it all together with some matrix. That's really cool. But I'm not sure how many times I'm going to want to do that, as opposed to going into a winery's tasting room and having someone talk to me about where the wine was grown and all of that, because there's no opportunity for conversation with a robot.
Also, you mentioned COVID. So, how much the industry has changed due to COVID, and how much the guest expectations have changed due to COVID, especially in terms of technology?
So I would say the guest expectation in terms of technology as a result of COVID hasn't changed dramatically. But I will say the hospitality world changed immensely during COVID. So many people left the business during COVID because they realized they didn't have to work nights, they didn't have to work weekends, they could make a little bit less money and work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, so to speak, and have a normal life. That was one thing that changed. So staffing became a challenge, and staffing became a challenge nationwide because the federal government incentivized people to stay home. So someone was collecting effectively double the amount of unemployment that they otherwise would have gotten paid had they not been furloughed or whatever during COVID. So we incentivized people to stay home, and that gave them other opportunities to figure out ways to make a living. So that impacted. And then when we reverted back to normal, the wages in our industry went up astronomically, where, we were paying probably anywhere between $5 and $12 less an hour 5 years ago than we are today for a server, for a bartender, and probably $7 to $10 less for a cook. So economically it has affected our industry, and food costs. Think about the supply chain and how the supply chain impacted our industry. So we had to raise our food cost. We had to raise prices, and people didn't like that. And so many things were impacted by COVID. On the positive, most clubs did really, really well during COVID because we were all able to establish a comfortable place that was a safe place for the family to come and join. So the club world has done very well, with the exception of city clubs. So in New York City, Chicago, the big cities that have a lot of city clubs, people were running from the cities and going to the country, so to speak. So they were joining yacht clubs and country clubs and beach clubs and social clubs that that had the physical space to do things outside. So we were able to create a market to do outdoor dining. We were able to create a market of takeaway dining that this industry never heard of before. So those are some of the positive things. And to this day, we still we do some of that. I'll take, for instance, the Super Bowl. Our club historically does not have a very well attended dinner meal period during the Super Bowl. So we closed for dinner and we did takeaway for the Super Bowl. And we more than tripled our revenues with much less staff for the Super Bowl and gave the members an experience that was, they were able to use their club, they were able to spend their money and come and support their club, but it didn't cost the club the labor and a variety of other things to perform that. So COVID had a unique impact on the club industry for sure.
Earlier, you told us about the big challenges for young professionals that they are facing in the industry. So, I would appreciate if you could give us your advice to young professionals that will help them in becoming a successful industry leader like you.
The one thing I would say is give the club industry a chance. It's a great industry. The one thing that I loved, especially when I was at that club, my very first club. So I was the chef for 7 years. I was the assistant general manager for 3, and I was the general manager for 10. So I was at that club for a total of 20 years. One thing that you'll never be able to do in a hotel or in a restaurant is to get to know your clientele the way we get to know the clientele in the club space. So I had the pleasure many times of doing, it was a predominantly Jewish club, so they do things such as baby namings and brisses and things like that. So I had the unique experience of doing a baby naming, a bar mitzvah, and a wedding for the same kid. So you get to know the family on a much different level when you're planning 3 life cycle events at the club for that family. So it was a really, really unique experience. I had more of the bar mitzvah wedding experience than I did the early life, the baby naming and the bris. But I did many, many bar mitzvahs and the kid's wedding, which I literally get to watch a kid grow up, which is really neat. Now you get to know the family. So that's a unique thing that our industry can offer that other hospitality spaces do not offer. The other thing is, I would say to a young person getting into the industry is give it a chance and explain to an old timer like me. I've been in the business for my entire career. I'm in my late 50s. So, I've been doing this a long time. Give an old person like me the opportunity to look at the world through your eyes. So help me understand what it is you want, because I think we're no longer your mom and dad's, your grandparents' country club, or your grandparents' yacht club. We want to make this place great, and we want to attract the best young talent we can attract. We can only do so much, but it's incumbent upon the young generation to help us understand what they're looking for. So open up a dialogue, reach out and sit down and talk with your boss and say, this doesn't work for me. Can we make it work together? Because it is all about being a partnership and about a team effort.
Could you please share your mentor names who have been motivated in building your career?
Sure. So the 2 most significant mentors, unfortunately, have passed away. The first mentor is a gentleman by the name of Ken Kenworthy, who I went to work for Ken when I first before I went to culinary school. I worked for Ken as a kid, and then I worked for Ken afterwards. And he really shaped me when I was a very young cook, becoming a chef. And then a gentleman by the name of Max Sands, who hired me as a chef. And I worked with Max for probably 10 or 12 years. He really shaped my career tremendously. And I've got other contemporary sort of mentors, board members, Richard Ketcher, who I worked with, who was my president for many years. Michael Lockhart, Lorcan O'Connell, Brett Morris, a whole litany of folks who I either worked with or are just friends and peers within the industry that I've learned a lot from.
Let's talk about your personal interests, like your hobbies, and how do you spend your joy free time?
So I am an avid cyclist, so I try to ride as many miles as I can. So this time of year in the Northeast, it's a little cold. It's not great for, it's not ideal for riding outside. Roads are a little bit icy. So I do a lot of indoor riding, but so I do a lot of cycling. My wife and I are fortunate enough to have a second lake house. So
Mm-hmm.
we spend a fair amount of time up our lake house and basically just relaxing, hanging out on the beach, listening to music, cooking. I still love to cook. I still cook a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I enjoy great wine. I enjoy great beer and just spending time with my family.
This is where we end our conversation. A big thank you for being a part of a podcast. It was a wonderful to learn you about your journey.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching us. Hope you liked today's episode. Drop your thoughts in the comment box. Make sure to connect with us on our social media at Advanced Hospitality Technologies. See you with another guest. Till then, take care and have a great day.